Welcome to another episode of Graceful Curiosity. I'm Henry.
I'm Michael.
We hope you had a Merry Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I did. How about you, Michael?
Yes, very nice.
Very nice. Anything crazy and unexpected?
Nothing unexpected other than I had to go to work in the afternoon. So
That's fair.
Yeah. So that's a break from the normal tradition.
Yeah.
But yeah, we made it through and had a good day. So
cool. I thought was cool was I got a woodworking tool.
Oh, nice.
So now I can be more like Jesus.
There you go. Yeah, that's right.
It's one of those, I guess it's right there. It's literally right there.
Okay.
It's one of those things where it has the blade and you pull.
I see. Okay.
Which, of course, I'm not using it the same way Jesus would use it, because I'm using it to make basically a prop for my lizard.
Oh, okay.
So not the same. He was probably making furniture or working on houses and stuff like that.
But you're still practicing your carpentry skills, right?
Yes, of course. Maybe I'll get to that level.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of my own sanctification, is becoming a better carpenter.
There you go. You go.
It all works out. But I imagine at least you had some good food, I'm assuming, and had some good quality family time.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
What was the biggest excitement from the kids? Because I can remember, I think everyone out there can remember as a kid, on Christmas morning, opening that one gift, and you're just blown away and you know what I mean?
Yeah. We got a pretty sizable dollhouse for our daughter Isabella, which she was over the moon about. Yeah. And then we got Micah a pretty significant sized drone. So he was
a drone. We're talking about drone flying.
Yeah, flying. Yeah, with four rotors or whatever it is, and a camera on it that you can fly around and get footage of overhead and all that. So he was pretty thrilled with that.
Is he okay at flying it so far?
Yeah, it's. We actually tried a little bit in the house, which of course you end up bumping into things. But it's perfect for going to the park, and getting some views and stuff. So but he's actually, believe it or not, he's actually more adept at using remote controlled things than I am, or my wife. So he's really good at that kind of stuff.
It's always interesting how kids can figure out these things.
Exactly. It really is.
So, well, that's enough about Christmas, because on the horizon we have New Year's. If you're watching this now, it is New Year's Eve. We hope you and yours all have a wonderful New Year's. We're just happy you're spending it with us.
Yes.
So be safe out there. I know there's a lot of partying. Make sure your dogs are okay. At least my dog goes, hides and hunkers down. It's the worst holiday of the year for my dog. Either that or 4th of July.
Yeah.
We just hope you have a good New Year, and we look forward to having more conversations in the New Year with more content. So thank you all for joining us this year. Just want to get out of the way, just so I don't forget it later.
Sure.
So, but with that housekeeping, you've seen it through Christmas Eve, here New Year's Eve. We don't miss a day, or a week, I should say. We're here every Wednesday at 12 at all of your platforms of choice. Remember, it doesn't matter for us which you join on, but it's just whatever's most convenient for you. We do appreciate subscribe, comments, or reviews. All of them help us grow and answer more questions from our people. So with that, Michael, we are on the conclusion of our Heaven and Hell series. If you've missed some, this last couple weeks, or this is the first time you're watching this, we've been going through all of misconceptions. We've been going through what heaven and hell are really like, and what the new heaven and new earth are like. And now, just kind of as a conclusion to this series, we thought we'd do something a little fun, and that is talking about how heaven and hell, our perception of those, have been influenced by pop culture and literature through the not just decades but centuries. And Michael, I think a good place to start is probably the most influential work on our idea of what heaven and hell is like.
Yeah.
and that is Dante's work.
Right. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, when we come to think, I think it's probably fair to say, or at least a very strong argument can be made, that when most people, at least in Western culture.
Yeah, right? To be fair, yeah.
When you ask them, what is your idea of heaven, or specifically hell in this case, right? More famously, it really, a lot of the imagery, a lot of the ideas, a lot of the feeling of who's going to be there, what it's going to entail, a lot of that is drawn really principally from Dante's epic poem, right? That comes from the Middle Ages, early Renaissance period, where the character of Dante, he takes this sort of guided tour through the afterlife, right? In this case, he's guided by the great poet Virgil, who takes him all the way in the sort of ascending journey, right, from the circles of hell all the way through purgatory and ultimately into heaven. But what's, I think, most significant about Dante's poem is that this is a self-consciously fictional work, right, where he wasn't attempting to necessarily put forward a work that meant to be interpreted as sort of literal,
not a theological work.
Exactly, right. Or at the very least, the images that he used were not intended to, map out what, for example, hell would be like. But there's a lot of evidence to suggest that imagery sort of became imprinted in Western civilization's understanding of the afterlife. And so what's so significant about that, I think, is that Dante took the notion of hell from Scripture, which, as we've talked about before, there's really only a handful of verses that really address the notion of hell or Hades, etc., the realm of the unrepentant, unsaved dead. And so he takes those sort of kernels of the ideas from Scripture and then vastly elaborates on them, right? So that in his understanding of hell, his the first third of his great work, the Divine Comedy, which is called the Inferno, he depicts hell having many levels, right? And there's sort of, in a certain sense, they're devoted to different sins, right? And so individuals whose lives were characterized by enslavement to those sins that they just habitually, practiced or were guilty of, they receive a sort of punishment that is fitting to the sin, right? So there's a sort of different punishment for the glutton or for the liar, and so on and so forth. And so it becomes this just incredibly elaborate torture chamber, we could say, for all the unsaved. And it, in so many ways, emphasizes this issue of sort of spectacular and elaborate punishments for all those who are damned, right?
Would it be safe to say how it's influenced human thought is that really it's influenced our thought about there's a hierarchy of sin?
Yeah, exactly.
More than, because Scripture will call out some sins worse than others just because of how destructive they are. Like, for example, like pride being a source for all, or like money itself and how it corrupts. But it really feels like Dante with Inferno really pushes that to an extreme.
Yes.
And I think because Scripture isn't making a tier list.
Right, exactly, yeah. And that hierarchy that you mentioned, that flows throughout the entire work, right? Leading into something like purgatory and then into heaven. And so the sort of implicit understanding of sin, just as you were saying there, does not take into account the Protestant, of course, because this was a pre-Reformation text, but it does not take into account the insights of the Protestant Reformation that really demonstrated that our eternal destiny does not hinge on how many sins we committed in terms of we had this many sins of gluttony or this many sins of deception and this many sins of whatever the case may be, and that our eternal destiny is determined by those things. Rather, it's determined by our reception of the gift of grace, right? Through the accomplishment of Christ on the cross. And so, it has an implicit understanding of sin that is very different from what we post-Reformation would ultimately say was the truth of Scripture regarding salvation. But so, these ideas of hell as this really sort of fundamentally an elaborate torture chamber, right? That just is it's really a projection of every horrible experience that we as human beings can imagine. That's the sort of vision of hell that comes out of the Divine Comedy and then has been taken up over time. And sometimes, unfortunately, right, it was taken up self-consciously by the church historically. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that the church sort of utilized these, incredibly terrifying visions of the afterlife as a means of asserting power, right, and maintaining its role as the only source of salvation, as it were.
And they would also, create art from it as well.
Exactly.
To give people visuals, not just speaking into it, but also like you can see, especially Renaissance art, how much has come from this. And it's hard, when making thumbnails for this thing, it's hard to find art that's not rated PG.
That's right.
Like a lot of the torment of hell, whether it's the violence or the perversion, it's like overwhelming.
That's absolutely right. There is a very significant, robust tradition of artwork depicting damnation that truly is horrifying, right, and intended to be so. And as you said, it served as a sort of visual reinforcement of the fear of damnation that it seems that the church wanted to instill in their members, right, and in the society at large. And so I think it's fair to say that there's a sort of vestige of that, right? Even in our popular culture that has survived all these many centuries.
Yeah. Because I think it's also, I think we talked about it a little bit with misconceptions, because Dante does push a point that the demons and Satan are doing the tormenting. So it wouldn't surprise me if Satan himself wanted to, make sure this propagates, to make him look better than he is.
Yeah, well, it certainly does. Right, it does portray hell as almost the sovereign kingdom, right, which is obviously very problematic from a biblical perspective. But again, too, it wasn't Dante's intention to offer a biblically accurate rendition of the
like you said, it was a fiction. It's a story.
Exactly.
And it's just, sometimes we run away with things like that.
That's right.
We let the human mind become imaginative. And it's kind of like a game of telephone through the centuries, right?
Yeah, in a certain sense, yeah.
Okay, very cool. Because we'll see kind of the through line of how this has influenced so much in different things. Because I know I will be definitely bringing it up in a couple places.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to share about it before we move on?
Well, just to say, again, a lot of what we'll see in even these other forms of media, right, that were created centuries after, we were able to, in a lot of ways, just as you were saying, draw a connection, right, a through line from Dante all the way to media that's being created in the 21st century. So that's just a really fascinating reality of that. But Yeah.
So, viewers at home, just to let y'all know how this is going to work is Michael and I both picked 5. So this is not going to be a comprehensive episode of everything in pop culture or literature. I think we'd be here all day, Michael.
Exactly.
You know,
all week. Yeah.
all week. Yeah. So what I tasked us both to do is pick 2 depictions of heaven, 2 depictions of hell, and then a wild card, meaning like it can be whatever you think, whatever. Maybe it's a little out there, maybe it's a little not exactly what we were looking for with the other, the other 4, just to kind of change it up. So with that, I'll start, and I must say, stand down, Tolkien people. You know who you are. This isn't going to be perfect, but I'm trying. I'm not that deep in the lore. I haven't read all of the books. I have looked at the Wikipedia, and I've watched the movies and read some of the books.
Right.
So, which that, brings us to, I guess our first allegory, which has Lord of the Rings. You can throw The Hobbit in there too if you like, and all of Tolkien's work, since that's pretty much all he really worked on. I mean, at least the majority of his work is in this universe.
Right, that's right.
And so with that, it being an allegory, I mean, a good way of putting it first out there is like, it's not like Narnia where there's a defined Jesus, with Aslan, of course.
Yeah.
Jesus Lion, as some people like to call him. But Tolkien was really showing how, we as Christians can become Christ-like. That's why we see so many, like, Frodo is a version of Jesus.
Yeah.
We see Gandalf is a version of Jesus. We see these different characters having a saving quality or a transformative quality based off, but they're not always like that. They're not like, they're just when the moment arises, they're brought to this moment. But Tolkien, probably out of all of this, because I don't think he really got influenced by, Dante's work. His first and foremost with hell, if you are evil, you kind of just disappear. Kind of showing like the end, or at least like evil creatures.
Yeah.
You're into nothingness. Tolkien was more of an annihilationist.
Interesting.
So, you exist into nothingness.
Right.
We see that when, spoiler alert, there's going to be a lot of spoilers for a lot of this media. But, like, when Sauron, kind of disappears into nothingness, right, when he's defeated. But, like, bad men, Tolkien didn't really show a hell. He did show the torment of your wicked deeds. So if you're evil and you died, you became a wraith, spirit, whatever you want to call it, and basically you were forced to roam Middle Earth for the rest of existence, and without ending. So it's like this kind of eternal torment. I mean, if you've watched the movies, read the book, we can highlight this with the people of the mountain, that Aragorn goes to see before they go to Minas Tirith to help defend Gondor.
Yeah. And
those people are considered bad because they broke oaths. Okay. Right? But then they were released, which then we also have to say that Tolkien was Catholic. So there's a little bit of the purgatory element there,
right.
So he's not perfect, right? But what's kind of also cool is when you look at elves. Elves are immortal beings. They're kind of, in some ways, an angel kind of analog, or maybe an Israelite analog, as kind of these workers of God or people of God. But when they would die, they would leave their bodies, they would be glorified essentially to be with their Creator and get a new body. Sounds familiar, right? Also, when men die, they would go to be with their Creator. So that was a constant thing with Tolkien, is like the end goal of goodness is to be and dwell with your Creator.
Right.
Which is very different. There's no tier list of like heavens. It's the end goal here is to be with your Creator, Uru. That's where you want to be.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a thoroughly biblical idea.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So, but he doesn't flesh it out. He's not. I mean, there is when you get really into the nerdy stuff. The histories of Middle Earth and all of that. Because basically, like, the wizards are archangels, and you can get
okay.
so like Gandalf's technically an archangel.
I see.
That's kind of the analog there.
Yeah, yeah.
In a way.
Wow.
So it's so it's you can get into the depth of the allegory, but I just think it's neat because Tolkien was steeped into legend. Like, he was highly influenced by like Beowulf and like Viking tales and stuff like that, but still he's still grounded in his faith and not influenced by the works, but he let his Christian faith influence the story he was writing. Which I think that makes him different. He doesn't have pop culture or literature at large influence him. He decided to put this into the ether of, this is I'm doing like a 1-for-1 here.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So it seems like he sort of followed a lot of biblical archetypes, right? Or sort of general principles, a general worldview influenced by Scripture, but he didn't try and necessarily map his Christian faith onto the story, 1-for-1.
Because like I said, we don't see Jesus lying.
Right.
Because actually him and Lewis would have conversations of like, because Tolkien found it infuriating that he just would make it just straight out there.
Right.
Jesus. Because I think he's the first person to coin the term Jesus lying.
That's interesting.
And like one of the quotes of their correspondence was having a Jesus lion.
Yeah.
Like, it's like right there hitting you in the face, and he's like, no, you have to be more subtle with these things.
Yeah.
So they both had a very different vision of writing and telling a story. But I think it's cool for both of them. And we've talked about this before, is like, and we've lost this in literature, is that, your Christian faith, you don't shove into things. It just exists in who you are, so it pours into your work. Right.
It's going to just sort of naturally, organically, happen. If you are working in the arts as a disciple of Jesus, right, those convictions are going to sort of inevitably, form the framework of your artistic creation.
And you can kind of say with like Lord of the Rings and like Narnia, this is kind of the last era of it. Before, fiction shifts. Where it's like you're just trying to, the pop novel, right? So, it's really the last kind of era of that, the 40s to the 60s.
Yeah, that reminds me, just as a tiny little aside, that recently here in 2025, in the last couple of years, the Dune franchise has kind of had a resurgence, right, with a couple films that came out, and the book has been circulated around a lot. And you have a copy right there. Perfect. Perfect timing. But I actually saw a quote from Tolkien where he was asked explicitly, maybe it was in a letter, I can't remember, but he was asked about Dune. And he essentially, to paraphrase his words, said he hated it, really, because that fundamental worldview and framework is missing in Dune, right?
Yeah.
It's a magnificent piece of science fiction, but it has a completely different sort of overarching moral and religious system, right, than does Lord of the Rings.
And it's in the religiosity is kind of a bad thing. So we see the main two groups are both zealots. Whether it's why am I drawing a blank? Why can't I think of the names of the two? Whatever. The sand dwellers and the witches.
The Fremen.
The Fremen. And I can't think of the... But basically these two extremist groups. So it kind of portrays, religious people as zealots. Instead of like, this is a good thing. It's
just a fundamentally different outlook, right, on the the role of religion
Yeah.
in human life.
But you can also see what's kind of cool is you can see like influences of Tolkien and how he wrote the religious Odyssey of the allegory.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because George Lucas was he was influenced by Dune, that's obvious as well.
Sure.
But he was actually, with the Force element, was highly influenced by Tolkien's work. So you can see, I mean, it's not like one for one, but you can kind of see like, even if he's not like a Christian man, you can see how these Christian ideas kind of got weaved into Star Wars.
Yeah. It's a transcendent idea, right?
Yeah.
Presence, etc. Yeah, it has some kind of divine-like qualities, certainly. Yeah. That's fascinating.
Okay, well, Michael, I'm going to head to another big piece of literature, I think pretty infamous piece of literature.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think it was Jack Black was in the most recent rendition of the movie.
Okay.
Oh, you have no idea? Okay.
No, I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, I believe it was Jack Black.
Interesting, okay.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
no. I think of Gulliver's Travels. Never mind. Ignore that.
I was going to say that would surprise me, but hey, I mean, you never know.
You never know. Yeah. Well, I'll just shut up and give it to you for your first heaven pick.
Yeah. So, John Bunyan's classic work, The Pilgrim's Progress, actually, I think has a really fascinating sort of a depiction of the afterlife, or actually one's journey to the afterlife. There have been, this is sort of a classic work from the early Puritan period, but there have been some film renditions of it. I actually haven't seen the film renditions of it. I'd be curious to kind of see how they translate that onto the screen. But I think what's so compelling about John Bunyan's work is that it is, as I said, a journey, right? And that is a theme, I think, that's so powerful as it relates to Scripture, and that he sort of encapsulates one's entire human experience, leading through all the peaks and the valleys of life, right? Through all the experiences of joy as well as despair and hardship and adversity and the struggle to work toward holiness through all the trials of this life. And he emphasizes as well, there's sort of a dichotomy that we have to pass through this earthly city, right? Which he calls in his text, he calls it Vanity Fair, right? It's filled with all the vanities of human, right, pride and all the shortcomings of our fallen human nature. And we have to proceed through this on our way to what he calls the heavenly city, right? Which is, of course, the New Jerusalem that we discussed in our episode on heaven. But I think what is so profound is, again, this notion that our existence as human beings is not just sort of, we're never static, right? We're never just existing in this life. That this life is, whether you're literally moving from one place to another, is inconsequential. It's that we're on a spiritual journey, right? A spiritual journey of, and this is borrowing from Tolkien and from, of course, the original notion in scriptures, the journey back to God, right? The journey from our expulsion from the garden back to his divine presence, where we will spend eternity with him. And so the Pilgrim's Progress, I think, very faithfully encapsulates the whole notion of one's spiritual journey from sin and doubt and despair into the glory of God for all eternity. So in that way, I think it's a very faithful and incredibly encouraging and inspiring as well depiction of what heaven will be like, what eternity with God will be like.
Very cool. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've read that book. It was in college, we read it. But it's a classic for a reason.
Absolutely.
So, and it's good, like if you can't basically how this is going to work is we're going to have one more faithful example and one kind
That's
of
right. That's right.
unfaithful or
Yeah.
kind of really out there example.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Michael, but it's weird. It was hard finding faithful examples of
Yes.
heaven.
Very much. Very much.
Because that's where I had to. I was trying not to pick Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
or Narnia.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so I was trying to think of something else, and I'm like, I can't really think of much.
Yeah.
Because everyone has these wild ideas and really have changed things. So,
Mm-hmm.
with that, here's my bad example of heaven, which this is from the show Disenchantment. It's on Netflix. It's a show by Matt Goring. He is famous for, of course, Simpsons and Futurama. It's an animated show, adult comedy. It's actually one of Emily's favorites because it's a satire of basically the Middle Ages.
Okay.
And it's really goofy. Like they call science. Like 'cause they can't pronounce it right or something. Little things like that.
A little slapstick. Yeah,
Yeah, and they're from Dreamland, but it's kind of a crappy place to live. There's all these little things, but they depict both heaven and hell. Mostly, one of the main characters is a demon that everyone mistakes for a cat. That's a weird looking cat you got there. This is what happens half the time.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
But they do. A couple of the characters go to heaven, which they get taken back from heaven as well.
Okay.
Because of course, you can't end a plot point where one of your characters is dead because it's an adult cartoon.
Right.
So, but their depiction of heaven, there's some parts they get right. Like the big part of heaven is you're with God, the Father. Everyone's there. You're all hanging out in one place. No one gets their own individual heaven. Where they get it wrong is what gets you there.
Yeah.
And also, everyone has wings and is kind of like we're kind of being like an angel, which that's very wrong.
Yeah.
And also just God's personality in it as well, because that wouldn't be comedic if he's just this all benevolent. And also, God has a light bulb head. So it's So there's a lot of inaccuracies there, mostly for comedic sake.
Right. Sure.
But and then also with hell, there's levels of torment, so you get the Dante vibe. And Satan is this very sharp dressed, demon-looking guy, but he has like in a pinstripe suit. So of course, he looks cool. But then he's submissive to who becomes his wife. So the king of hell is submissive to a woman. So there's all these little, it's really interesting on so many levels. Like it's making fun of. So that's why I think the main inaccuracies is it's trying to make fun of all of it.
Okay.
Both heaven and hell.
I see. Yeah.
That is not what it seems, and it's kind of all manufactured.
Yeah. So it's taking sort of like dimensions of this notion of hell and heaven that we've taken from Dante, and then just sort of exemplifying them to the extreme, right?
And
for
throwing
comedic effect.
Yeah, comedic effect. Like, like we in pop culture, we've Satan's this big bad person. Well, it's funny that he's submissive to his wife.
Yeah.
Big bad Satan. He can't.
Right.
He's got to listen to what his wife has to say. So, or like I said, God just has a light bulb head, and if you take off the light bulb, he shuts down. Like things like this. Like it's all for comedic effect, and so it's not very accurate.
Yeah,
Not very
certainly.
accurate. I mean, it has less like you can always find a little bit of truth in things. Us being with our Creator, and then also hell being a place of torment. But then that's where it ends.
Right.
Yeah, that's where it all ends.
Yeah, exactly.
So next up, which I know this well too, so this is a good pick. What is your second pick for heaven?
Heaven. Yeah, so this is a kind of another comedy, right? Sticking with that theme that came out in recent years, called The Good Place, right? Another sort of major network television comedy that's sort of centered around the scenario in which what is commonly understood to be a bad person or somebody not worthy of hell, right? They get sent to heaven by mistake, specifically by a clerical error, right? Yeah. So it portrays the afterlife almost as this kind of like bureaucratic system, right? Yeah. In which, to begin with, it would be possible for someone's eternal destiny to be determined by a clerical error, right? Yeah. So, and I think it's had several seasons now, and
well, I think it's done airing.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Yeah. But so the main characters have various different dramas and things they go on, and funny, humorous hijinks and all that, right? But the again, the depiction of the afterlife, right, follows this this notion that it's not really necessarily determined by God's sovereignty, right, but by just like a bureaucratic machine, as it were, right, that determines people's fates. And so, needless to say, right, that is, not consistent with, and nor is it trying to be, right, right, consistent with any sort of biblical understanding of how our eternal destinies are determined.
Yeah, and it also depicts kind of this idea that heaven is too squeaky clean.
Yes, exactly. That's right. Yeah,
because you see it through Kristen Bell's character is the one that gets the clerical error, and like how she's not, like, none of it's exciting to her.
Exactly.
And like you get this placement of marriage in heaven, and someone's picked for you, like all these different things, and it's just it's very interesting.
Yeah. So in other words, it has like the most impoverished idea of heaven that you could possibly have, right? It's just sort of a projection of this life, although lived in, like you said, a overly squeaky clean, moralistic sort of a way of being. So yeah, needless to say, right, it doesn't even attempt to approach the reality of what heaven is and will be.
Yeah. So now we're going to flip the script and go to hell. I've been thinking about this, and I think my number 2 choice is actually more accurate than my number 1 choice.
Oh, okay.
So,
interesting.
Sticking with Matt Goring is Futurama.
Yes.
Which is an interesting satire on what hell is, because the only time we see hell is robot hell, where they've created a robot demon, because Futurama takes place in the year 3000. So they have they've literally manufactured hell, which I think is an interesting theme, that we have manufactured hell. Both, talking about with Dante about the level of manufacturing this idea of it being a tier list and all of that, to because at least with robot hell, robots come and go. Like, you get your punishment, you leave. The robot devil just shows up randomly, does a tap dance. There's torment. He's doing torment on robots based on what they've done. Right. Or it's like, it's your time to pay the penance, because robots can't really die unless they run out of battery or something like that. So they have to be alive to experience hell. Right. So it's just this interesting idea of which kind of goes into it, of this, because I think there is a little bit of truth in that, is that we've manufactured our own eternal destiny. Like, we choose where we go based on what we decide to follow, and what our, using our free will, the actions we choose to take. Whether we decide to live a life with God, or run away and enjoy the pleasures of the flesh. So we create this own manufacturing. We manufacture our hell for ourselves. So it's also kind of a commentary of, like, how we do manufacture our own hell in our own living life. Because we can, by our own sin, it creates these, sin is damaging. Yeah. and it creates these rippling effects of damage through our own life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting commentary if you kind of take it on a meta way.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
You know, in this manufacturing angle. So it's just interesting when you kind of think about those types of things.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, yeah. So your first pick for hell.
Yeah.
So we had Tolkien in here, so we had to have Lewis in here.
Oh, inevitably, right? Inevitably, yeah. But so for a depiction of hell that I think actually really captures the spirit of sort of the biblical witness of hell, or at least the biblical witness of what life outside the grace of God would be like. I think C.S. Lewis, this little book he wrote called The Great Divorce is so adept at, I think, capturing a lot of these ideas. And it's really interesting because he characterizes this as kind of it's almost like a reverie that the narrator has, because it's revealed, another spoiler alert here, it's revealed at the end that this journey that he takes through heaven and hell happens when he apparently accidentally fell from his reading desk at home, and so he at the very end he sort of wakes up and finds himself on the floor, and this whole experience that he had leading up to this was sort of this reverie that he had while he was unconscious. So again, it's in a certain sense like Dante is not intended to directly depict the afterlife with exactitude necessarily, but thematically I think he captures the notions of heaven and hell in ways that are in my opinion are really unparalleled in like contemporary literature or art of any sort, and the emphasis that he makes in his depiction of hell, what hell is like, how one arrives there, how the sort of worldview or sort of orientation toward God that those who find themselves in hell, that sort of orientation that they have, is one in which they find themselves in hell not so much because it is a punishment in which, certainly not one in which they're being tormented by demons and they've been condemned there in such a way that it's just a punishment being done upon them. It's rather a decision that they make to be apart from God and apart from redemption and healing and the reformation of their souls. The reality is that they would rather be in hell. They would rather be alone with their frustrations and their neuroses and their habitual sins and all of these things. They would rather be there than in the presence of God.
Yeah.
They would rather be content with their imperfection. They would rather not give up their imperfections than they would then embrace the holiness and perfection of heaven. And so the result is that, as is famously said in that book, the gates of hell are locked from the inside, right? And it's also made very clear by the Virgil character, George MacDonald, that is guiding the protagonist, the narrator, throughout this journey. He makes it very clear that if the person who is in this state of unrepentance, if they choose to say my will be done, rather than thy will be done, God will allow them to make that choice.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is incredibly profound,
Yeah.
in that rather than hell being this elaborate torture chamber as is so often depicted, it's a natural outworking of one's rebellion against God and their refusal of the free gift of salvation that is offered to them.
Yeah. I think also we can't mention The Great Divorce without mentioning another Lewis book,
Sure.
The Screw Tape Letters.
Yes,
'Cause I
absolutely.
think
Absolutely.
these two kind of go hand in hand. You get the human perspective with Great Divorce,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get the demon perspective of kind of
Yeah.
wanting to bring the downfall of man,
Mm-hmm.
so they go to hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, which I think these are both great pieces of literature by Lewis.
Yes.
That give a great depiction of both. I don't know which. Do you have a personal favorite out of the two? You probably quote The Great Divorce a little more. I think.
Yeah. I think so. I think they're both utterly remarkable, like in how they understand the human soul.
Yeah.
You know, it's just when I just recently reread The Great Divorce for this, for our filming of this, but both of them just understand human nature so deeply. It's just astounding.
That's just that was a gift Lewis had, was
Yes.
just understanding human nature.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be because he came to faith later on in life,
Right.
by Tolkien.
That's
Shout
right.
out Tolkien again. But it could have been that, or just this gifting that God gave him.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you see this throughout all of his. You see this in Narnia, just like being able to see human nature at play.
Yeah.
And he has this deep understanding that I think we can learn a lot about ourselves just by reading his work.
Exactly. And I think he was so adept at understanding the obstacles to faith, right?
Yeah.
Those characteristics that we have as human beings that draw us back from God,
Yeah.
And his way of articulating those is just peerless, in my opinion.
Yeah, because that's why I think the main point of Screw Tape Letters is just seeing how temptation grabs hold of us.
Exactly.
I mean, it's shown through a perspective that the demons are figuring out and strategizing to get us.
Exactly.
But it really shows how temptation can just take hold of us and tear us away from God. But it can also show, which I think is, because we see this demon's frustration in the Screw Tape Letters, so we can also see what Lewis is portraying of what keeps us away from the temptations as well. In a more subtle way, he presents that, with the demon's own frustrations that they're having a hard time getting so-and-so to do this.
Exactly.
So,
that's exactly right.
Yeah, we might as well be a C.S. Lewis podcast at this point, but we always recommend any of his work. All of it is phenomenal. I know one of my students got his whole the classics collection.
Yeah.
Which has both of these books in it for Christmas. And I said, have fun.
Yeah. And I mean, and the thing is too, you will come back to these books over and over again throughout your life.
I probably read one. I mean, I don't read all of them every year, but I at least read one every year. I'll grab one. It might be based on what I'm feeling at the at the time or whatnot. Or if I'm like, is this a good book to recommend? So I end up going down the rabbit hole and finishing the whole book. 'Cause they're not long.
Right.
That's the other thing. They're not like,
they're not.
They're not Lord of the Rings long. They're actually digestible. Like usually around 150 pages. So they're easily digestible. And I think Lewis is also easier to understand. He didn't make up a language. That's fair to say.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so that's a wonderful investment. Yeah, for those who want to go out
and they're relatively cheap because you can get they sell the whole collection of like all of them. You might as well get all of them in one go instead of buying them. Yeah, I mean, like I have one that's literally all the volumes, all of them in one volume. So, and I think that was like $25. Like it's relatively inexpensive. Yeah. So. And they're great reads. And like you said, you'll keep on coming back.
That's right.
So, going on to the next one, which is an interesting one because now it really matters to pop culture. So we're going to talk about comics here. Yeah. And that is the depiction of hell within Constantine, Sandman, Hellblazer, Lucifer, this universe, which why it matters is because now that is the canon depiction of hell for all of the DC universe. Okay. So, because they are canon within the DC universe, especially since Constantine hangs out with the Justice League, and actually is part of Justice League Dark, which deals with like the supernatural elements of this earth that are destroying things. Hangs out with Wonder Woman a lot. But so like this idea that Neil Gaiman came up with is now a major part in one of, you know, biggest fictional universes in America that Americans read, or and globally we read, right?
Yeah, for sure. And we're in a sort of media period where comic books are as influential as they've ever been.
Yeah.
Right. So this idea is proliferated everywhere, right?
So people get to see. So people will get to see this version of hell. Of course, there's been multiple adaptations with the Constantine movie, which Keanu Reeves was in. There's a season of Constantine the show. There is Lucifer, had 5 seasons. And then Sandman recently on Netflix has had 2 seasons. And it's this idea of hell, basically this idea which is proliferated now in the DC universe, is that there's these different realms, and hell is just another realm.
Right.
Like there's the dream realm, there's even the heavenly realm, there's the hell realm, which Lucifer, which is an interesting point, at least within this universe, is Lucifer is the king of hell, but then he gets, with the Lucifer part, gets thrown to earth and cast out. So he gets cast out of heaven, then he gets cast out of hell, and now he's on earth running a bar.
Interesting.
So, but I think the things that do get right is when you do see hell, especially in depictions. I think Constantine does a good job, and Sandman both. If you want like a visual, you know, because you're like, I don't want to get into comics. But it's basically hell is this wasteland. It's not like, pleasure center, whatever, but it's like this wasteland, like a place of no water.
Yeah.
Kind of like there's no life. It's so decaying and distraught. Which I think that gets it right, where it's like this place of torment. It's not supposed to be this place of celebration and living. It's supposed to be this place of eternal torment and not a pleasure house.
Yeah. Interesting thing, just really quick, is in the couple frames that you see hell in the Passion of the Christ. It looks very much like that arid desert. Right?
Constantine and Passion of the Christ came out the same year, and if you put them right next to each other, and we didn't tell you which movie was which, I don't think you could tell a difference. No, I'm just being honest, because I've watched, because I watch Passion every year during Holy Week, and I rewatched Constantine, I think in July. So like just remembering, I'm like, they were both. That was the depiction. This desert, this really. Maybe like orange coated desert kind of like thing of, and you see the cracks in the ground because the mud is so dry, it's just it's causing fissures. You know, and you see the souls that are tormented there. So it has it right in that aspect. Of course, where the misconceptions we have is like, the demons are the tormentors and they're kind of running it.
Right.
And there's actually a power hierarchy where Lucifer gets knocked out, Satan gets knocked out. That's I mean, what does get right, I think, is Satan is always beautiful. It's talked about in Scripture that he's an angel. He looks like an angel of light. So that's why he's a great tempter, because he looks like, he belongs to God, but really he's this seductress of lying and sin. So they do get that depiction right. If you've seen the show Lucifer, you've seen he's this suave, person, but like, the main issue is, it's not a place you can come and go from. It's not a, the demons don't hold power. It's not their kingdom. But that's where it's depicted. So, and this is the same. If Superman dies, he'll be going to this hell or going to heaven. I don't know.
Interesting,
But because if he's unrepentant, then because at least they play with that. Because especially with Constantine and Hellblazer, which they're the same thing. They just called it Constantine for the movie's sake, because that's the character's name. That they do talk about, a lot. That is, believe in Jesus Christ is how you get to heaven.
Wow.
So, well, if Superman doesn't believe in Jesus, he is going to that hell that's depicted there.
Interesting, yeah.
So, unless they've done some reworks, I haven't read these comics in years. They've done some rework. It's just interesting. How this has influenced, going forward, different things. This could be someone's exposure to what hell is like.
Yeah.
Is this universe.
Fascinating.
Because they are both, like Hellblazer and Lucifer and Sandman are all, New York Times best-selling comics.
That's
they're
true.
they're like
Yeah.
they put them into collections and they sell so many, and they re-release them all the time in new forms and new collector's editions and stuff. Like they sell as well or almost as well as like Superman and Batman.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So this is a lot of people's exposure.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's so it's just interesting.
Certainly.
So with that, your last hell pick.
Yeah, so I had a couple picks here for these misrepresentations of hell, if you will. That sort of, in my view, kind of encapsulate the whole tradition, right? That begins with Dante. That is this, again, as we've said over and over again, this vision of hell as essentially the worst human experiences of pain and torture that we can imagine, sort of writ large, right?
Yeah.
And we had mentioned artwork that sort of carried on this tradition in Europe over the centuries after the Inferno or the Divine Comedy was written. One of the more notable aspects of this is The Last Judgment by a Dutch artist named Hieronymus Bosch. And this is sort of, if anyone looks it up, again, as we said, these are not PG rated images by any stretch of the imagination. But if you were to look at images of this painting, again, you would see the damned, the unsaved, right, human beings being tortured by demons in just, a myriad of ways, right? Every way you could think of, right? They're being tortured physically, as it were, by the demons in hell. And so again, the torment that's depicted in artwork like The Last Judgment is not of the spiritual sort that we find in The Great Divorce, but it is purely of the physical sort, right? That goes back, calls upon Dante.
Yeah.
And so this is just, again, elaborate tortures of every possible thing you can imagine. And as well, as we said, if you were to encounter this sort of artwork within the church or elsewhere, it's reinforcing this fear of damnation.
Yeah, because you kind of have this trust in the church, and here we are putting this, artwork on the wall, so it must be somewhat true then, I guess.
Yeah, right, and that would be the sort of the implicit understanding that your average churchgoer would have, presumably. And then to sort of continue this, I chose a sort of modern rendition of this very same idea, which comes from a 1960s Japanese film called Jigoku, which is sort of the equivalent of hell in the Japanese cultural tradition. It also draws on some Buddhist influences. But this is a film which I'm not necessarily, as I wouldn't necessarily recommend looking up the artwork of The Last Judgment. I wouldn't recommend watching this film necessarily. But again, it's a culturally significant film within the history of Japanese cinema that's sort of viewed actually as one of the precursors of the horror genre in Japanese film, which I think is very fascinating. But it follows a couple characters that end up sort of participating in It's sort of an elaborate story, but basically they commit some very serious crimes, and then they slowly find themselves in a descent into hell. And again, it features all, as with the work of Hieronymus Bosch and others, features a lot of these tortures that we've been talking about here. And so it's almost like a cinematic equivalent, right, to the artwork of the Middle Ages and Renaissance that emphasized hell as a realm of physical torment. And so you can see almost a certain continuity, right, between these understandings of hell, from artwork in the Middle Ages all the way to film, right? And certainly that carries on into the modern period as well, as you just mentioned, all these film adaptations of subjects that include the concept of hell or various depictions of hell. So, in other words, that tradition of hell as a physical torture chamber, right? Going back from the Divine Comedy, that notion is still alive and well even today.
Well, speaking of Japan, so with their last being Wild Card, I just find, because I watch a lot of anime, read a lot of manga, just how much the idea of heaven. So if you don't know, Japanese media has a weird obsession with Christian imagery, hence Jingoku. They just have this weird, because I would say we do identify Japan as like a Buddhist or Shinto place, but they're not really that religious. It's just a part of their cultural heritage. And only 2% of the population is Christian. But they like this imagery, and that's why you'll find a lot of Catholic priests or what have you, or demons, and a lot of their depictions of things in heaven and hell. And it's just, they have this weird obsession. And most of the time, actually majority of the time, it's not right. It's not right. They're like one of the creators could be like this is a famous example, Neon Genesis Evangelion is a show which has a lot of revelation imagery. And the creator will literally said, like, I just picked it because it looked cool. so that's kind of these ideas, but the idea of the afterlife. I got some show and tell here. I think I'll start with probably the most famous, which that would be Dragon Ball, which I think a lot of people know. This is usually a gateway into anime, for at least for us in the West. But there is a heaven and hell in there. But instead of demons, there's ogres that kind of run hell. And they have a giant T-shirt that says hell on it, which is kind of weird. And it looks like they're in gym clothes. But because it's Dragon Ball, everything has to be around fighting. So it makes sense. But like when you come, the soul comes to the gate. King Yema, who is kind of in Japanese culture, is kind of like our Jesus, like the judge, stamping whether you go to heaven or hell.
Fascinating.
So if you go to hell, that's where the worst get tormented by these ogres. It could be like, one of the depictions, because Kira Toriyama, the author, likes comedy as well, so he implements it. So one of them is one of the people were tormented because they were turned into kind of a beehive and bees were stinging them. So like things like that, like crazy thing. But then also like this idea of, which kind of gets in some of the other ideas of like tier list, right? And that is, there's different levels of heaven. You're mostly just this soul that does nothing if you're not strong enough. So it's different because it bleeds into the Dragon Ball, like power level and being strong. So like that's why like Goku, the main character, actually has his body because he's strong enough and he's not like these useless souls.
I see.
And they have grand martial arts tournaments and all of that, and there's all these tiers by these people called Kais and everything like that, and they follow the snake way as they go to their particular heaven they're going to. That's what's depicted here as the snake way, And they all get their little halos when they die.
Yeah.
You know, all these iconic images.
Mm.
So it's just this interesting take on, like, the afterlife. We see how, you know, they're not Christian, but here is these ideas being bleed in.
Yes.
Then going into more of the case would be Yu Yu Hakusho, which just literally means spirit detective. That's what that means.
Spirit detective.
Okay. And Yusuke dies. The main character, that's this guy with the green hair, right there, dies, and he does an unceremonious thing that doesn't make sense for his character. So they don't, because he saves a little kid that's about to be hit by a truck.
That's right.
And they don't know what to do because it made his balance weird. So they give him this opportunity to become the spirit detective and earn his life back. And then we see this depiction of, because it's not called heaven, it's called spirit world, and hell is the demon world. So, like, demons run rampant over hell and control.
Okay.
There's 4 demon kings that run all of hell. Like, there's all this depiction of, like, there's a hierarchy and people running, and different souls, you know, based on what you do will get you where you need to go.
Yeah.
Which that's where we see a lot of, if you'll notice, a lot of Catholic thought.
Okay.
And I could go on and on. I wanted to share a different take, though, that I thought was interesting. This is Vinland Saga. And it's about Vikings, but it's more of a historical fiction taking place when the Vikings are invading England and going to take it over. And the Vikings are actually somewhat organized, specifically with their kingdom of Denmark being kind of in control. But it's this idea that half of the Vikings are Christian at this point, and half the Vikings still have the Norse thought.
Right.
So there's a lot of conversations in this book pushing back and forth between the idea of Valhalla and the idea of heaven. You have to have a glorious death for Valhalla, but here I am saved by Jesus, so it doesn't matter what I do.
Yeah.
So it's this pushback in these ideas, and really the Vikings that believe in Valhalla making fun of the Christians because they're so entrenched in their warrior culture of making it, and they think the idea of heaven sounds boring. We should have a giant feast, and it should be, you know, about our warrior, you know. So it kind of also shows how culture can be kind of entrenched in the idea of heaven and hell.
Most definitely.
And, like, whatever's the dominant force is what will determine what it looks like.
Yeah.
So, in our case, you know, it's the tree of Dante. You know, going back to the beginning. Like, the tree of Dante is the dominant force and has influenced all of what we perceive.
Most definitely.
Because I don't think there's any work we talked about that, well, I guess there's a couple. I guess The Great Divorce and Lord of the Rings, like Pilgrim's Progress, you know, like these things don't have Dante's little hands on them. But everything else that done by non-Christians, that's fun. Well, we're recording there.
Okay.
So, it's always fun, you know, when technology says that you don't have enough space on your computer.
Oh, no.
So, but we're recording there, so it's all good.
Okay.
So it's just interesting how other cultures that aren't Christian kind of see the Christian culture and the Christian ideas of the afterlife. Because it is heavily influenced, like I said, a lot of Japanese think cultural imagery, or Catholic imagery is really cool. So they steal the ideas for demons and hell and heaven and all of that stuff, because they're kind of agnostic in their way of viewing religion. I mean, they even make the devil a part-timer in a show where he gets transported to Earth and becomes works at a McDonald's equivalent as a cashier.
Wow. Yeah.
So the Japanese have no shame with what they'll do.
Fascinating.
Putting the devil in his place, working at a McDonald's or McRonald's as it's called in this series. So
wow.
Yeah. So that leads us to your last pick.
Yeah. So for my kind of wild card pick here, really interesting kind of a rendition of the devil here in pop culture. Comes from a sort of a video game that came out fairly recently, maybe a couple of years ago, called Cuphead, which is actually very, very humorous. It's kind of set in kind of a Looney Tunes art style with all sorts of goofy
like a
characters
1960s animation aesthetic.
Exactly, yeah, very slapstick and this, that, and the other. But the antagonist is just simply known as the devil, right? And he's a cartoon rendition of what we might commonly conceive the devil to look like, right? With horns and the pitchfork and all the rest, right? A Looney Tunes rendition of the devil, if you will. But what I think is interesting about this depiction is that in the game, he's basically a casino owner, okay? And the story of the game revolves around our kind of cartoon protagonists here have to pay off their gambling debts to the devil by helping him collect on souls, right? And so again, it's not meant to be serious. It's not meant to be profound. It's not meant to offer any kind of interesting, significant depiction of what evil is, etc. But what I do think is interesting about this rendition of the devil is that, we earlier you talked about this idea that the devil is seductive, is appealing, is attractive in the way that he offers temptation to humanity. Well, there's also, another side of the coin that's true, in which evil is just a lot of times banal. It's just crude. It's just, based on simple things like greed, right, and power. And it's not necessarily sophisticated or ingenious. It's a lot of times it's just, a simple expression of our crude, sinful desires, right? And I think the character of the devil from this video game exemplifies that that the devil may be this figure of sort of cosmic significance in a lot of our conceptions of Satan, but at the same time, right, evil is evil, right? And it can be understood by something like a greedy casino owner, or put in whatever occupation you want, But a lot of times evil really just is that crude and simple and irrational. So this game, I think, offers a nice little encapsulation of that concept.
I think what we can see with all of this, outside of select the three I just named, that are actually Christian people, like our culture has really warped what it all looks like, and no one really knows what it at least at the culture at large doesn't really know what this perception is, and then it skews. It kind of goes into Satan being this king of lies and kind of distorting biblical truth of what it's supposed to do, and I think that's evident in culture, and what we're seeing with all these works is that culture has created this false way of looking at it.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I mean, as you said here, sort of these dominant images that we have really inherit a lot of these erroneous depictions of the past. And not only that, but these depictions sort of reinforce our sinful and flawed understandings of how things work. Because in most cases, right, there's no concept of grace in the afterlife, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's the good place or whether it's, Futurama or Japanese anime, your destiny is determined by if you are a quote-unquote good person or not.
Yeah.
Right? And so in all these depictions, the biblical notion of grace, which is front and center in any understanding of human destiny, that is completely absent.
Yeah, it distorts words. It distorts, our understanding of what good is.
Yes, definitely.
And distorts our expectations. I think it really distorts our expectations of God and how He operates.
Yes.
Like what we perceive as good may not be what God perceives as good. So it changes this dichotomy in our expectations of who He is and what He does, which then makes it hard, on us.
Right.
When we're trying to speak into other people's lives and try to, explain things, especially as like teachers of the Word.
Yes.
It's a lot of work to unravel these lies and share truth.
Yeah. And so then, that sort of implies, right, that it is the burden of the church then to offer and proclaim a correct and biblically faithful understanding of these ideas in order to combat all the misconceptions that are out there.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So, I think it's a good place to stop. We've gone through quite a bit. You can see how crazy things are out there. Hopefully we've given you a couple of good places to explore.
Indeed.
So, with that, I've been Henry.
I'm Michael.
And we'll see you next time.